This is a Power 98.7 podcast. Now we're talking. Subscribe to Power 98.7 podcasts in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. There's more on power987.co.za.
At exactly 20 minutes to 5, a Power Up on Power 98.7 now. We are talking some of your messages on X. Let's just take it from Paul R. Good morning, Yembe says, good morning, Marara. I don't agree with the caller who said investors who spread lies and all other things so long as they create jobs, even though they are racists. No. And that's the thing. That's why I always give an example of Pablo Escobar. That Pablo did some great things for people, but he killed people. He was a criminal. He was peddling drugs. He did so many wrong things. Yet he built schools and churches and gave people money. He was giving people in Medellin more money than the government. So does that make him a nice guy? I don't know. Mpoar, good morning to you. Tsapi, how does one praise a person who hates the country to come operate our internet space when he has a history of threatening another country to cut off their internet just because they were not towing to his politics? Let's use our brains, says Tsapi. Pox, to do business in any country, one needs to comply with regulations and have all the certificates to operate. To my knowledge, regulations are just changed to accommodate certain deals of businesses. Why is the Starlink deal treated special, rather? Borama Posamara. Yeah. Men G, good morning. I see your tweet. Sister Pule Are, I think people must go watch Julius Malema's interviews on YouTube, not the clips in Parliament, but ones in podcasts, funerals, and radio stations, etc. They'll see the real Julius Malema. Matemba, I don't believe in Elon Musk. He can go to hell with his jobs, but my problem is this stupid constitution here has sold our country out. The country has gone to the dogs. It's too late to save it. Let's move on to this conversation. Gogo Nomi Dhlamini is on the line with us. We're talking about gender roles and expectations when mourning. Now, grief is universal, but how we express it, that often depends on who we are, or more precisely, who we are expected to be. We're in conversation with traditional healer and founder of New Age Sangoma, Gogo Nomi Dhlamini, as we explore how grief may look different from person to person, and also help us understand how grief is handled in our communities. Now, in feminist literature today, there is a good deal of emphasis on the way men and women are more alike than not. And that's is still, the jury's still out on that one. Men and women have similar feelings when someone close dies. Sense of sadness, loss, emptiness, and yearning for the person who has died may be very much alike. But what do we do with these feelings? How we cope? It seems to be very different for men and women. And it also looks different from person to person, depending on who died and when in the life cycle that death occurred. Good morning, Gogo.
Morning, Kwena. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Thank you, as always, for making time to speak to us. We appreciate that. I mean, are there traditionally any gender roles in terms of or expectations during a time of bereavement, Gogo?
I mean, I think if we're being honest, they definitely are. It's not something we can run away from. And I think we see it just from the beginning. As soon as usually the male passes away, you would see that the female sort of gets restricted. She's not allowed to move as much. She needs to maybe even sit on, inverted commas, umatrasi, certain types of attire change, and she now has to maybe wear darker clothing. She's not really expected to make much of a noise, and she's locked up in a room already for the first few days before even the funeral, And I think, in the past, I would have thought this is probably something that's being done to stress the person out or to restrict them. But now that I'm growing older, I'm realizing it might just be something that was done to try and protect the person and almost assist them so that they're not having to deal with the grief of losing a partner, but rather just focus on the mourning period and the mourning process, I think what's sad is that, unfortunately, we don't see the same thing done for men. We see them having to make the court decisions when they've lost their counterparts. Everybody's looking to them to do the running around. Everyone is looking to them to make the really important decisions just around the funeral and how it's planned. And I think a lot of the time we actually do forget that these people have also just lost a counterpart.
Does societal expectations also play a role in that regard, in terms of how men and women grieve or mourn or behave in times of bereavement?
I definitely think so. We grow up in a time where you look at how society is built and it's more around men being the decision makers. And so they need to take authority in those times, whereas females, I guess, are seen to be so much weaker. And so for them, it's like, no, relax, you don't need to touch anything. What I think is sad is that obviously society isn't as equal or as even as things were in the past. And so right now, you could find that even the female was a stronger counterpart in a relationship, but everybody forgets or ignores that when there is now this period of bereavement.
Also, if you look at it in terms of grieving time, as it were, is there also some sort of expectation to say men, have this whole thing that we get over it sooner than women, and vice versa?
I think it's a perception, but I don't know if it's the truth, because from what I've mostly seen, that men actually get quite affected, and that's why a lot of the time you see that the male counterpart actually dies soon after their partner, because how they cope is actually quite different to how females cope. And I think it does have to do a lot with how they were prepared. I think people just forget and then they ignore them and think that they're fine. And honestly, you find that they actually are not. And so a lot of them, soon after their partners, actually do leave. Whereas I think what we see with females is that people check on them more. People are just around them more. People offer aid to them more. And so they actually do survive better when their male counterpart is gone.
So as far as expectations from a traditional perspective, is there things that men and women should do or can do during a period of mourning? Like, for instance, and I think at some point we spoke about this on the show, where a wife is not expected or not allowed to go to the graveside if an in-law has passed, a mother-in-law or a father-in-law. Are there those kind of expectations also that add to this?
I think for me, when you've lost your counterpart, I think there's fewer or more simpler things that are done. And I think this is really to help you out, right? So the first thing that I know of is that you'd be offered a tincture or rimbiza, something to drink to sort of clean or clear your blood system of the other person. And this is expected of both males and females to, for a period of time, drink this, In different families, someone might decide that they want to go full on mourning. And so they, as the female, would decide, I'm going to now fully wear this black attire, or as a prescribed thing in that family, they would be expected to wear that full attire. I've seen in these more recent years that they actually do change the color a little bit, so it's not so much the black. Some people would then do the cutting of the hair, and I've seen the cutting of the hair on both sides, both male and female. And then there is a period of mourning where, for example, you come back at a certain time before dark instead of being home for or being out rather for after maybe a 6 p.m., And then I do think now it's different, because some people would say, okay, I was mourning for 3 months, 6 months, or a year. But I know before it would be at least a year. And then there are ceremonies done to help cleanse the counterpart, depending on the situation. I just think when it comes to the females, it's something that is done more or is more out in the open. Whereas with the males, it's something where maybe, yes, the mbiza or the tincture, but everything else maybe is not prescribed to them. And I think that you can make the choice, even as a male, to say, I will sit around for a short period of time just to honor my wife.
We're in conversation with Gogo Nomi Dhlamini, traditional healer and founder of New Age Sangoma. We are talking about gender roles and expectations during mourning or in times of mourning or bereavement. I want to talk about the issue of, I guess, tradition and age, in that if you have an older person who dies at the age of 80 plus, an octogenarian, in comparison to somebody younger, does it differ in terms of that because of the traditions that we practice, but also in terms of the beliefs of what people have had in comparison to a 40-year-old and an 80-year-old?
I don't think it should differ, actually. I think what matters here is the quality, actually, of the relationship that you had with the person. And I think this is why I say, when you're younger, you think these things are just done. But the older you become, it's like, why wouldn't you want to mourn for your partner who's been good to you, who is treating you well? Why would you want to put no, I'll just do this for 6 weeks and then move on with my life? If the quality of the partnership with that person was good, surely you do want to mourn that person properly and actually give yourself that time for you to be able to say, you know what, now I'm okay. And I think the beautiful side then of being African is that you are given that period of mourning for that reason. We just look at the rules around it and we feel like, oh my gosh, this is so tedious. But really what it is to say to you, we are offering you time for you to be one with yourself and actually recognize that you've suffered a loss.
When you will look at it at the modern age, what do you think has changed, if anything, Gogo? Or does it go back to that whole thing of how we are diluting traditions in terms of expectations?
I think, you know what it is, Kwena? It's time. There's just no time. People have to go to work. People have to actually, fast forward on life more than it was before. And so before, as a wife or a partner, maybe you would be at home doing a lot of the work at home. Now you're in a functional space where people even make it uncomfortable for you to mourn because they will be asking about your attire. They will be asking all of these uncomfortable questions that make you feel even more uncomfortable now about your mourning.
And I mean, again, to that point, how should we handle that? Or does it differ, again, to your point, Gogo, in that certain traditions and beliefs will evolve and others will remain?
So I do think that evolution will play a part of it, but I think it's the same as with any cultural aspect. When you really believe in something, you will stand up for it and will say to people, maybe, no, I actually do need the space to do this, and maybe I don't want questions about it, But I think that is taken on a case-by-case basis per person and as per sort of like, how do I really feel about this? Yeah.
Just as we went on the conversation, expectation from the community and family, how much of a role does that play in that sometimes the community expects you to behave a certain way? I mean, I remember years back when my father passed, there are some family members, and I'm talking aunties and uncles who kept on saying, "Umunna, why are you crying?" And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? They're like, no, you should not be crying, umunna, man up and behave like a man, And I thought that was totally unnecessary. It's like, okay, but I need to, this is how I am expressing how I feel about the loss of my father. Does the community...
I think the community is quite unfair, and I think, it's up to us to take the space that we need and even distance ourselves from those comments when we need it the most. But I do think that when we are better, it is a time for us to correct people and to let them know that actually I didn't appreciate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because that's how you actually create a better society. You don't create a better society by just keeping quiet and raising your eyebrow. You actually do communicate it back to say, I don't think that this is actually something that you should be doing in the future if you're ever going to go and say you're supporting someone.
Just finally, I mean, and looking also at the issue of evolution of traditions and beliefs, do you still feel that people have to follow, or do we need to readjust to how life has changed or keeps on changing without alienating who we are and those practices?
So I think for me personally, I'm a very traditional person. So I believe that these things should be done, But I'm also of the opinion that if something is not in your heart, then why are you doing it in the first place? If there is a way that you can find peace or solace that is contrary to what has been prescribed to you, where you feel that this is how I mourn. I also think that that should be allowed, because that's how you're trying to deal with something that's actually hurt you quite a lot, And so I do think things can be flexible. It's just that if I had to be the one in that position and I had to mourn for someone, I would do it because I believe that time is created solely for that and is for me, not against me.
Fantastic. Gogo Nomi Dhlamini, thank you as always for making time to speak to us. Appreciate your time and your insight. But for people that want to find you, want to have a conversation with you, find out a little bit more about you, where and how do they get in touch with you?
Thanks, Kwena. So they can WhatsApp me on 083-988-7916. I'm also available on all social media platforms as Nomi Dhlamini.
Thokoza Gogo.
Thokozani.
And a good one to you too, Gogo Nomi Dhlamini. Again, when it comes to issues of gender roles during mourning, the expectations that a woman must stay in a dark room on a mattress, or even maybe you are not that close, but also the expectations of what you need to do, how you need to do it, and those other issues come into play. And I'm sure we will hear more about this story, but I just read this a tweet about 27 minutes ago from Newsroom Africa that says police have found the VW Polo that has been used in the Olorato Mongales murder. They have arrested the owner in KwaZulu-Natal and are also searching for 2 more men believed to be directly linked to the young women's murder. So I guess that is the story that is unfolding, and hopefully we'll hear more details about that. And I'm glad that a breakthrough has been, has been made in that regard. Because again, the more people like this get away with it, then we are going to have a big problem. And also it diminishes the whole issue of speculation, because we will keep on speculating and blaming and all this and other things. But then at the end of the day, hopefully the truth shall come out. So that is the latest that has come out there. Didindla, when my grandmother passed at 101, you're blessed, 101. One of those calls I got was saying I should not be crying since I enjoyed my grand for all these years. Just thought it's noises since I spent all my life with her. Ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, look at those things. Why do you want to dictate to me how to behave when I have lost a loved one? And I mean, I know that whole thing, I know, celebrate the life. Yes, I can still celebrate the life of somebody who has lived 100 years, 90 years, and so on. But that doesn't mean that I'm not feeling the pain. You know what I mean? So I absolutely get that. But sometimes people want to dictate to you how to behave. And I think that's the most nonsensical thing ever. Poloho, are Morning K, those racist liars in America want business from the same people they are accusing of genocide. Should South Africa find another satellite company, Elon must rest, because he's going to use company to spy on South Africa and accuse us on something else in the future. Macy Pala, good morning. I'm loving the music. As always, who never disappoints. Best day of the week. Diane Sibanda, good morning. Great to see you on this Tim Nice, good morning to you. All right, yeah, I see. Yeah, and we'll touch on this at some point, maybe next week or so. Rafiki says, as a foreigner who hangs around a few circles of foreigners, I would like to ask Anele, where does he get the fact that people are being paid by e-wallet? How is Julius creating unemployment? I believe politics goes with religion. I will call tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, yes, they do. But I just found the fact that saying Julius does this and Elon does this, they just did not, at least to me, it did not make sense, right? Sambil, I have a question. Can't the government invest in tech startups that have the potential of pushing internet access, such as Musk's business? If so, then why isn't the government doing so? Anyways, it's just a question. Look, at the end of the day, if government wants Starlink will happen. Whether we can cry, scream, shout, sing, Starlink will happen. And I mean, I'm all for job creation. Don't get me wrong. But I'm saying, should we always bend over backwards because somebody's creating jobs? So it doesn't matter what you do. As long as you're creating jobs, then we are okay. You can lie all you want. You can spread nonsense all you want. And it's like, oh yeah, but he's going to create 1 million jobs.
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.